Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Omni viewer, and the time has finally come to start those deep dives into Godzilla Minus One. To begin our journey, we'll start with what is arguably the most iconic scene in the entire movie, the shot where Godzilla fires his heat ray in Tokyo. Everybody remembers this scene, and everybody loves it. In fact, it was a popular choice among the participants of the 7th One Monstrous Moment event. It certainly leaves quite an impact on the audience, what with the expertly timed build-up, the sheer display of raw power, the stunning mushroom cloud visual, and the impact it has on protagonist Koichi Shikishima going forward. When discussing Minus One, everybody lands on this scene at some point. Which begs the question of what you could possibly add. Well, Snazzy, for as many times as I've seen people bring the scene up, I've never heard anyone talk about its deeper meaning, specifically how it ties into the movie's socio-political message. Before we get too deep into the topic, I'd like to point something out. Godzilla Minus One has political subtext, but it is not an overtly political film. Most of the themes to be found within are best described as personal and emotional, which is precisely why it resonated with so many people the world over. Despite being a story tailor-made for post-war Japan, it's something anyone can watch and understand. That said, the movie does have a political message, and this scene of nuclear devastation is where it comes to a head. It all begins at, well, the beginning, when Koichi fakes an issue with his plane to avoid his expected role as a kamikaze pilot, which would have required him to not only empty his weapons on American ships, but also crash his plane into them, which would have killed him in the process. He can't bring himself to do it, and the reasons why could probably fill a completely separate video. The important takeaway for now is that he was expected to sacrifice his life for the sake of the Empire, yet he did not. Tachibana doesn't even blame him, as he believes the war is a lost cause, but that's the only support Koichi ever gets, as he's derided for not doing his duty when he returns to the mainland. Later on, the word comes down from on high that the tiny little minesweeper boats are supposed to somehow deal with Godzilla out at sea until a bigger battleship arrives. Captain Seiji immediately expresses his disgust with the order, saying, "This country never changes. Perhaps it can't." Naturally, he's referring to how ridiculous it is that the politicians expect a dinky little wooden tugboat to somehow deal with a sea monster that took down an armed ship 10 times bigger. The crew is essentially being told to sacrifice themselves if that's what it comes to, and it nearly does. It's the same mindset that was held during the war, and even though the war is over, the mindset remains. Much later than that, Doc Noda gets a speech that basically spells out the message in plain terms. He notes how during the war the government treated human life as disposable. The politicians didn't care that supply chains weren't maintained, or that vehicles had no life-preserving measures, or even that their soldiers were dying as the US Navy pushed across the Pacific. The only options were victory or death, and the death part was expected. With Operation Wadasuda being a civilian campaign, Noda hopes to bring as many men back alive as possible, since he values life. From there, it's easy to put the pieces together and figure out the movie's message. The government does not care about people, it's only looking out for itself. Then again, it's one thing to say something like that, and a very different thing to show it. Which brings us back to the Ginza Rampage. Now, to provide the full context for this scene, The government has decided that Godzilla's existence must be kept a secret from the public in order to avoid mass panic. This means that the Ginza district has not been evacuated when Godzilla makes landfall, and hundreds of civilians have no choice but to flee from the Titan on foot and hope they're fast enough. Moreover, Godzilla is able to march through the city completely unopposed. Well, there are tanks that fire at him. Well, sure, but where are those tanks? Surrounding the Capitol building. Oh. Yeah, you get it. In any other Godzilla movie, heck, in any other monster movie at all, those tanks would be valiantly rolling down the street to try stopping the kaiju wherever they found it. Sure, they would get destroyed, but the point is that they're meeting the enemy head-on. In -1, however, the tanks surround the seat of power and don't fire a single shot until Godzilla gets too close to it. That right there is a full display of governmental apathy towards the public. They kept Godzilla a secret to maintain order, but when he started attacking the city, the politicians then ordered the military to surround the Capitol building and protect them, not the people. So the priorities are crystal clear. Gee, that could potentially reframe Godzilla destroying the building, couldn't it? The selfish politicians are all huddled up in there counting on the military to protect them, and it's all for naught as Godzilla blows them to Kingdom Come, and the visuals are similar to when America ended the war with the bomb. In the end, their selfishness and misanthropy is their undoing. That is one way to look at it, if you assume the politicians are still in the building. The other way of looking at it is even more frustrating. You see, the politicians know that Godzilla is heading for Japan, and they have an alarm system set up to warn them when he gets close. I therefore see no reason to assume that they would stick around once that alarm goes off. They could easily have hightailed it out of Tokyo and only had the tanks show up to cover their escape. In that case, the people in those tanks would die defending an empty building. Yet again, the government sacrifices human life for its own sake. Well, that's definitely darker than what I said. Either way, though, it really drives the point home. Indeed, and it's not just the Japanese government that's depicted as selfish and uncaring. The American government has advanced knowledge of Godzilla's approach, but they also say that they can't do anything to assist Japan if and when he makes landfall. Now granted, the evidence suggests that the Americans wouldn't be able to do much against him anyway, but the stated reason is because any action taken against Godzilla might provoke the Soviets. Were the Soviets really that big of a threat in 1947? Well, whether they were in real life or not, it all plays out the same. If the Soviets are not that dangerous, then America is just making excuses to not get involved. If the Soviets are that dangerous, it's still not the best look to offer Japan nothing other than well wishes. On the other hand, if the Soviets are that dangerous, it's because they're beginning the expansionist phase of their empire and are looking for any excuse to start a new war with America, so they don't look so good either. Not that the Soviet Union ever looked good, but you know what I mean. And just to make it even crazier, this message is pretty much the exact opposite of Shin Godzilla's message. In Shin Godzilla, the post-war government of Japan is inefficient, strangled by red tape, and run by a man so useless that he couldn't grab his own butt if he sat on both of his hands with his palms facing up. No matter what decision the PM makes, it's wrong and makes everything worse. So the government is ineffective and useless, and the answer is more government, only this one can make unilateral decisions and does such a good job that even the nuclear fallout isn't a problem so long as they're in charge. Meanwhile, in Godzilla -1, the government is a faceless entity that only cares about itself. It considers human life to be as disposable as toilet paper, and thus it doesn't care to do anything in preservation of it. In a time of crisis, the people are better off coming together and saving themselves. After all, who understands the value of people's lives better than the actual people putting their lives on the line? With all of that said, feel free to debate the implications of both movies on your own. As far as I've noted, that's the extent of Godzilla -1's political side. The rest of the themes are grounded in humanity and morality and whatnot, but we'll get to those another day. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. Just to be clear, I don't want to diminish the work that anyone else did while examining this scene in the most recent One Monstrous Moment. In fact, I highly recommend you look at the most recent playlist and check out those videos to see what other people had to say of it.